Okay, so you might be asking yourselves, is Part 2 still part of the 200 subscriber special? Well, no. It's the 250 subscriber special. Yeah! Yeah, we ended up hitting that mile marker right after Part 1 went up. Which I guess means this special has a lot to live up to now that it's actually 2 specials in one, so let's recap what we've seen so far. The nightmare forces that turned Princess Luna into Nightmare Moon returned, plaguing the 6 heroes with nightmares before taking a special interest in Rarity and dragging her away to the moon. Led by Luna herself, in her old Episode 2 form, the Pony Gang traveled to the moon to rescue her, where they learned that the nightmare forces weren't just vague and mysterious powers of darkness, but a very literal army. Because clearly Nightmare Moon's problem was that she wasn't enough like Queen Chrysalis. And how did they become an army, you might ask? By corrupting the innocent creatures we just found out at that very moment happened to live on the moon. Because clearly Queen Chrysalis's problem was that her army didn't need cutesy animals to randomly be living on the moon. And where was this army when Nightmare Moon invaded the first time? Trapped behind the boogie stick coming out of the ground. The army first attacked by trapping the gang in their nightmares, like this one here in which Twilight was fired by Celestia and her tail that's drawn in a way that makes me not even want to speculate as to where it's growing from. But when that didn't work, they resorted to summoning their newly created queen, Nightmare Rarity. Also, I guess the fans would consider me remiss if I didn't mention that Applejack never wears her hat during this story. So okay then. Actually, I did like the first 2 comics overall. They still managed to feel very big and ominous with the build-up, and the nightmare sequences were at least one area where I think they're actually better than the TV episode they're being compared to right now, Do Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep. But I've seen plenty of stories fall apart at the halfway point, and plenty of other ones hit their stride, so let's finish this up and see if it turns out to be a dream or a nightmare. Yes, I do write my own lines. Issue number 3 opens with Princess Celestia back in Ponyville, preparing the town in case the nightmare forces manage to launch an attack. Cutie Mark Crusaders reporting for duty. How can I help rescue my sister? A saves Ponyville from certain doom, Cutie Mark, would be so cool. I would have no trouble believing you if you told me this story had now done everything it wanted to do with the Cutie Mark Crusaders. But at that moment, the image of the Nightmare Queen reaches the town, and though the citizens are afraid it means the return of Nightmare Moon, Celestia is somehow able to tell that the look is different. Meanwhile, back at the moon, Nightmare Rarity confronts the gang. Let's see, what would a Nightmare Moon Rarity sound like? I don't know. It's true your powers defeated me before, little ponies, but what will you do now that I've taken one of you? Without all of you, your elements of harmony are powerless. Bit of a pickle, isn't it? Hold on a second. Nightmare Moon was a sentient being completely separate from Luna? She wasn't some ultimate combination of the nightmare powers and the perfect specimen to channel them? Well, if the host doesn't have to be anyone special, why didn't she just get one of those moon creatures like the rest of her army? I mean, you really expect us to buy that the queen had last dibs? It can't be because they're not powerful enough, considering there's already a huge gap between Luna and Rarity where that's concerned, and they confirm later on that they only chose Rarity over any other pony because they thought she was their best shot at breaking up the elements. And even if that really makes Rarity worth waiting for, why not have one of your other monsters corrupt her? Then you could put your queen into play from the get-go. I mean, aren't you creating a double-edged sword by making your most important player, the one you have to use, also the key to defeating you? And what about Luna? The fact that she's the princess of the night doesn't actually have anything to do with this? She just happened to be the first candidate on hand? More importantly, though, that seriously diminishes Luna's role in becoming Nightmare Moon. What you said last issue, that she was constantly hearing the perfect thing to exploit her anger and corrupt her, sounded like a perfect fit. But now, that's just how they lured her in, and from then on she was totally out of the driver's seat? Shouldn't she be seen as the survivor of a huge trauma then, instead of a redeemed but guilt-ridden traitor under influence? You ponies are dense, aren't you? Remember those nightmare forces you all destroyed with your little elements of harmony when Luna was around? Well, guess what? You didn't do such a super job after all. They now control your friend. Me, I suppose. Rarity is gone. Do I need to make a diagram or something with pictures so you can understand?
Yes, this is the most slapdash explanation I've heard since Rainbow Rocks. There are nightmare forces who came to power by possessing animals that live on the moon, and their nightmare queen only possesses ponies, so she first started with the moon-controlling princess of the night by sheer coincidence, and now she's possessed Rarity, so she's sort of a corrupted version of Rarity, but mostly the same character they defeated in episode 2? This comes across like you're trying to have everything at once, instead of just expanding on what worked about Nightmare Moon in the first place, and it takes all the intrigue out of your lore. I mean, honestly, you probably would have been better off just keeping things a little more vague. The friends, of course, refuse to believe that Rarity is gone, and Pinkie Pie thinks one of her special memories might snap her out of it.
Like Rarity. Remember that time we were at the spa and the hot tub's bubbles stopped working? And I told you that joke about the aardvark marrying a pipe cleaner and then poof, suddenly there were bubbles? You were so embarrassed you made me hoofy swear to never, ever, ever tell? I'm sorry, I totally just told.
Maybe I'm just slow, but was that a fart joke?
Anyway, Spike actually gets through to her for a second just by being the little guy she knows and loves, platonically that is, but she manages to reject him and instead puts Luna in the spotlight. Luna, 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 you had it all. How foolish you were to give up your power. And for what? These weaklings? Ha! Yes, I mean, remember how great I made it sound a second ago when I said it meant you were gone forever? You're missing out. So naturally, Luna and the others reject her once again and a fight breaks out. And like all good stormtroopers, the nightmare creatures aren't too tough individually, but all of them together are overwhelming. In fact, at one point, Twilight only avoids getting hit from behind because Spike saves her with a last-second tackle. Unfortunately, the creature's a lot bigger than Spike, and because his fire breath is only useful when the writers don't want him to be a pushover, he ends up being thrown far from the battlefield. The ponies, I guess, decide that they need to cut their losses a bit and tell Luna to go back to Ponyville. Run! Now! Or Ponyville won't stand a chance!
Yeah, because defeating monsters there is so much different than defeating them here. Come on, don't ask for much. Just say why, at least. It's not the same if I have to make up my own reason. Sure enough, the ponies are subdued and captured shortly after she leaves, though I have no idea why Twilight can't just teleport. Pinkie, however, after talking about nonsensical escape strategies, begins trying to get her captor to wiggle with her. Stop that incessant wiggling! I can't! It's too much fun! No comment. So they're imprisoned in a dungeon, and they at least make an excuse for Twilight's magic not working inside the castle, claiming there's a counterspell on it. Fluttershy, meanwhile, starts missing her animal friends, when suddenly she spots what she believes is a little critter scurrying around in the corner. Oh my goodness, little friend, come into the light so I can love you up.
This won't end well.
And sure enough, it turns out to be some kind of bat, mouse, hamburger meat thing. Which seems to make Fluttershy love it all the more.
Hello, you cutie, and you can come and live with me in Ponyville. You'll love it there, Miss Buffy.
You know, Fluttershy was never quite my first choice, but there are times when she's genuinely adorable.
When she brings up that they have a baby dragon, the group remembers that Spike took a pretty big fall and might not be okay, which cues us to cut to the little guy, who of course is just fine. He conveniently seems to more or less guess what happened to the gang and sets off to save them, meaning yes, it's time for the hijinks-filled side adventures with the baby dragon sidekick. They even have him cover himself in camouflage slugs to spy on the Queen, because the comics secretly hate him just as much as the show. He then messes up his break-in 2 times over, first when a nightmare creature notices the key is missing, and while searching for it, hears him singing about himself, and then runs to get backup for whatever reason, and then when he wanders into a throne room that has him labeled as the king, and doesn't find it even a little suspicious. Rarity then appears, which he finds even less suspicious, and starts assuring him that they're about to be king and queen together. Will you, Spike? Forget the past, and be my... Wait, did you say forget the past?
Okay, so he's not smart enough to see through this obvious ploy that can't possibly be real, but he's smart enough to spot the catch in this contract. Either there's something here not being explained very well, or this franchise can't even make up its mind on whether he sucks long enough to finish one scene. He confirms that she's a fake when she doesn't recognize the fire ruby he's still carrying, so she reveals herself as the Nightmare Queen, using her power to create dreams just like she can create nightmares. This doesn't leave him much better off, though, and he's promptly subdued by her guards.
I will never help you! Ever! Throw me in a dungeon for a bajillion years! I don't care! Help? What could a silly little deluded dragon possibly help me with?
You tell me. You're the one who was trying to get him to work for you exactly 1 page ago.
The final issue begins with Luna on her way back to Ponyville, kicking herself in a way that might seem very familiar to anyone who's seen Do Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep. She then arrives and gets to work, like they said, as the only one who can save them. The Nightmare forces are on their way. They will attack Ponyville. Don't worry. We'll be ready for them.
Hey, wait a second. Luna came back from the middle of a fight to do that?
The Nightmare forces are on their way. Yes, they are.
I mean, I already knew that it was just an excuse to put her in this part of the story instead, but at least don't be that obvious about it.
Meanwhile, back at the moon, the Pony Gang is really starting to get under each other's skin, although I think Rainbow Dash is forgetting how insults work, trying to get back at Applejack by telling her she's all howdy partner about everything.
Seriously, you guys, that's enough! Stop being...
Your crazy, wonderful selves. And then, calling back to Hearthwarming Eve, I guess, a strange love-powery thing starts happening with Twilight's horn.
What the heck is that?
Why, it appears to be this story's Deus Ex Machina. So the gang joins Twilight in thinking positive, inspiring thoughts about the power of friendship, and it lights them up from the inside because it's inspiring, I guess. I don't know. Over with Spike, the guards shatter his fire ruby and reveal that the Queen does in fact have a use for him, as Rarity is not entirely gone after all. Apparently, destroying their home will make the transformation permanent, but how Spike would help them with that isn't revealed before his camouflage slug buddies show up to help him get away.
The silent treatment? Clever. But your silence won't save Rarity once your love is gone.
Though admittedly, I'm not sure what you're going for by growing extra eyeballs all over yourself.
So Spike scoops up the pieces of the ruby and slips back down to the dungeon, and I guess the light of friendship was just because giving him the credit for finding them on his own was just too much. It turns out, though, that he doesn't have the key, even though it was sort of implied that he stole it before. So the gang has to put their heads together to think of their own way out.
So now there was no point to him even sneaking down there at all?
Pinkie Pie then starts wiggling again, and it turns out that by doing it before with the guard, she got the key to fall out of his pocket. So she's actually the one who had it this whole time.
So now there was no point to the last issue's worth of story that the pony spent locked up even happening?
It's not like Pinkie Pie was biding her time or something. That would have just given the guards more time to notice that they didn't have the key anymore and take it back. Which they would have done if Spike hadn't gotten caught at just the right time. Plus, was I even supposed to think that Spike stole the key? Because if not, that whole sequence would have seemed very disjointed. But, because of their insanely fortunate string of events, things are now, in fact, much more in their favor, between their new Light of Friendship trick and now only having one guard to worry about. Have a nice nap there? Am I missing something here? I mean, what's supposed to be funny? Does it have a bedhead or something? It's made of nightmare smoke, I can't tell. But luckily, it happens to be an insecure guard, who actually listens when they point out that nobody's nice to him. Meanwhile, the Nightmare Army invades Ponyville. The citizens actually put up a decent fight, and as always, pies are a legitimate weapon here, while Luna squares off with the Nightmare Queen. But when the Queen distracts her by saying she can sense Luna's bitterness, Luna gets hit and goes down. The citizens, however, rally around her in a bit that further suggests this inspired Do Princess's dream of magic sheep, eventually recharging her and restoring her newer look. But, despite a few nice lines, and even a couple entertaining ones, it's not really as good as Do Princess's dream, because instead of being woven into the climax, it's just an offhand thing that happens prior to it. And it doesn't go as deep into what it takes for Luna to be able to counter and reject her feelings of guilt either.
You're all fools. Love, trust, friendship, blah! Try power, fear, darkness.
Why do pessimists always feel the need to preach their case to you?
Can't you see? You have nothing left. I've even taken your dragon.
We just beat back your army, we still have both super powerful Alicorn princesses. I mean, why are you just now trying to play up that you got rid of the main? It's time for their dramatic reappearance, isn't it?
And sure enough, the guard from before enters holding Spike. No matter. Our man, what's-his-face has him. Or should we be shaking in our horseshoes? I love how she has absolutely no reason to ask that except to set up Spike's next line. Actually, you probably should. Take it away, Jerome.
How are the moon creatures the ones with the most normal names in this story? Even if the two we've heard are from the Three Stooges.
So Jerome tells off Larry, and the Pony Gang makes their grand re-entrance. You're all okay? Who could possibly stop us? Now show us what you got. Certainly. And summoning the power that she couldn't use before because she didn't believe in herself or something, Luna turns the moon creatures back to their normal selves. The Pony Gang then blasts the Queen with their newfound vagueness of friendship powers and force her to, quote, loosen her grip on Rarity.
My friends, you came for me. You didn't forget me. Geez, those things must have sucked on your brain, didn't they? You mean you didn't replace me with an ill-fashioned pony with braces? Why would we do that? I thought you'd forget me if I stopped being fabulous. I want to help. Always.
She let the Nightmare Queen take over her so she could be fabulous? I mean, was Nightmare Moon considered attractive by pony standards? Actually, never mind. I don't want to know.
Anyway, in what's actually a pretty sad moment, the darkness then re-encases Rarity even as she's pleading that she doesn't want to go back to it for how cold and lonely it is. So Twilight decides that if Rarity's weakness is that she's scared of being forgotten, then the solution must be to all remember something they love about her. So they gather round and call upon their favorite Rarity memories, like the time she helped Applejack build a bird's nest, or the time she farted in the jacuzzi. Actually, the unfortunate thing when looking at these other memories is that that's probably the most relatable of all of them. I will admit though, Twilight's does look kinda sweet, even if they did kind of do an awkward job on that front view of her face here. Spike, meanwhile, in a moment that puts a surprising bit of sincerity behind his character, remembers the time she kissed him, earnestly says, "You mean everything to me, please come home," and summons the magic to repair her ruby. And if that's not dramatic enough, I don't know what is. Sure enough, Rarity is pulled from her nightmares and back into the waiting arms of her friends, leaving the Nightmare Queen to vanish, not with a bang, not with a whimper, not even with a second glance in her direction.
Thank you all for reminding me.
Reminding us.
Reminding us that every pony is irreplaceable to their truest friends.
So with everything back to normal, the gang asks Luna to come by for a slumber party sometime, and she sets off to escort the redeemed creatures back to the moon. Every pony says their goodbyes and sees them off. Nightmares are nothing but fear that lives inside you. You've shown me that we all have the power to defeat them, if you just shine a little light of love on them.
And I'm going to assume that's Princess Luna talking there.
So, what's my reaction to this story all in all?
Really just a condensed version of my reaction to Return of Queen Chrysalis. Where I have problems with it, they're pretty much the same, cheesy humor and slapdash storytelling. But instead of starting out just okay and improving to pretty darn good by the final issue, this one doesn't really change that much across the board.
Issue number 1 actually starts out pretty ominous, like I said, and with plenty of good character moments, but in the last third it gets a little lost in the bad, frantic jokes and explanations like the Nightmare Forces being back because there's a legend that sounds just as spontaneously made up as it probably was. Issue number 2 pulls off some powerful individual moments for the characters, and is actually pretty solid, other than the way it sets up the villains. Not only does the lore really start to lose me here, the creatures themselves are just sort of there, and they don't come across as all that persuasive or intimidating or interesting, so Rarity's corruption by them isn't as big as it should be. And then there's 3 and 4, which continue to escalate the adventure pretty well, but there are some contrivances that hinder its momentum. It seems like it wants to have everything at once. It wants to be a definitive look at Luna and her struggle with this. It wants exclusive focus on the story about the main 6 and Rarity being taken away from them. It wants to separate Spike from them and just give him his own rescue story, but it also wants them to be responsible for their own escape. And after building us up for this dark, whimsical, almost larger-than-life story, where the villains represent the self-fulfilling nature of fear and nightmares, it kinda reduces them to just an evil army that corrupts things by trying to fill in their entire lore for us. Notice that in the beginning, Luna describes being corrupted by them as constantly hearing the perfect thing to convince her to keep going, to accept their energy and their hate. But then, when we get to Rarity, they keep implying that she's just been taken out of the driver's seat by a totally different character who was also Nightmare Moon. Personally, I think they would have been better off just making Nightmare Moon the entirety of the Nightmare Forces, instead of bringing in moon creatures. Just throw in a henchman or two if you really need more characters to play off of. And I also would have liked it if they'd let Luna stay with the main characters and go on the adventure with them, instead of parallel to them. In the end, though, nothing about it is remarkably bad. There's nothing impossible to roll with, and like I said, it escalates moderately well. In fact, the ending it builds to is actually pretty heartfelt, though it doesn't compare to Twilight blasting away the entire Changeling army with the strength of pure, unfiltered righteousness.
So yeah, they're good comics, but this is what everyone wanted me to review so much? Really? I mean, I believe it's one of the most epic scale stories in the comic book series, but I don't know. I think we need some more extreme examples on the quality scale. In the meantime, though, thanks as always for watching. I'm grateful to each and every one of you for subscribing to me, and here's to more fun in the future. Well, hope you all enjoyed that. It's about time I got to it, truth be told. If you're not one of my now 270 and counting subscribers, you can click the link on the left to join. We'd love to have you, and it'll make the next special happen faster. Otherwise, you can click the link on the right if you'd like to watch part 1, or just check the description, where there are links so vast in numbers, even I don't remember where all of them go anymore. Anyway, other than that, I hope you're all having a good week, and I'll see you at the next one.